Hello and welcome to part 5 of module 17 in our C language series. Today we're going to focus on deletion of nodes in a list, deletion of a node in the middle of the list, deletion of the start element, and deletion of the last node in the list. After that, we will write a program covering everything we've learned about linked lists. So let's get started with looking at deleting in the middle of the list. Let's say we have a case like this, and this is the node we want to delete. Now, as you may have figured out already, what needs to change then is that del ptr prior next should now point to del ptr next. Right? So that's the first thing we'll do in our code when we are deleting in the middle. And the second is that del ptr next prior, right, should now point to del ptr prior. Right? So that's all for deletion in the middle. What about deleting the start element? Let's look at that case now. And we want to delete this particular node. In that case, again, this node will now be the start element, and therefore this should be a null. Right? So del ptr next prior, right, which is this particular pointer, should point to null. Right? So that's the first thing. What else needs to change? Start, right? So the start element will be now del ptr next, right? Now let's look at deletion of the last element in the list. Let's say we're deleting the last element there. So in that case, all that needs to happen is that del ptr prior next should point to null instead of pointing to this node, right? And that's all we do. Del ptr prior next equal to null. Now, keeping this in mind, let's write some code, write code that allows for deletion of an item in the list, and we need to take care of all the cases we discussed. Right, so let's go to code blocks now, and we can start a new file. And what you can do is you can copy the entire program we wrote earlier, the one that we used for sorting, right? You can bring that program in. Right, so this entire program, we can just copy it to the new file. And then make the necessary changes. First thing is to introduce the function. So after store data, we will say void delete data. That's going to be the name of the function. And the argument that's going in is char name. Right, so we look for the name to be deleted, and on that basis delete the rest of the details. Right, in main, what we'll do is outside this while loop, before print data, we'll ask for the name. So printf enter name to delete, and then scanf %s comma del name, which means we need a variable now, right? So above where we have reply, we'll introduce a pointer to a string of characters. We call that del name, right? And once we've got the name, we can proceed to call the function. So delete data, pass in del name. Okay. Then of course we call print data and exit. Okay, so just align the code. Now to write the code for the function itself. Okay, so you can put it anywhere you like. I'm going to put it after store data. So that's going to be here. And we're going to say void delete data and that's going to take char star name. And within this function, we have struct address star del ptr, and then del ptr equal to start. Now we need to look for the name, right? So while strcmp of del ptr arrow operator name, comma name, right? So as long as this is not returning a null, we will move along in the list. So del ptr equal to del ptr next. Hope this is clear so far. Now once we have this returning a 0 as in strcmp, which means we found a match, then we check if del ptr prior is not equal to null and del ptr next is not equal to null, right? Which means that we are deleting in the middle, right? And so we can put our code there now, del ptr prior next equal to del ptr next, and del ptr next prior equal to del ptr prior, right? I'm just going to put a comment out here saying deleting in the middle, right? Otherwise, so else if not del ptr prior, which means del ptr prior is a null, which means we are deleting the start element. In that case, del ptr next, right, prior is equal to null, because del ptr next is going to be the new start, right? And del, or rather start, equal to del ptr next, right? So this is deletion of start element. Right? Else, now this means we are deleting at the end. So here we say if not del ptr next, then del ptr prior next equal to null, right? And last equal to del ptr prior. Okay, now you could use different logic if you like, right? But let's see how this works. Okay, so this is deletion of last element. And now let's run this and see if this works. Okay, we need a semicolon there. Enter some data. right? So now no, and let's enter something to delete. Now let's look at a middle node, right? So remember, this is going to be sorted. So I'm going to delete, let's say, June. And you will see now that June is not in the list when it's printed out, right? Now let's try deleting the start element. Again, we'll enter some data. Now let's try entering the first element. So let's say Andy, that's going to be the first one. That's the only one that starts with A, right? And you can see now that that does not appear in the printed list. Similarly, we can look at deleting the last element. So let's try that out. Now let's enter the last element. That would be the one starting with V. And you can see now that that one does not appear in the list, right? So this is how deletion of a node can be done using a doubly linked list. Now moving on. Build a simple program that allows the user to enter data, delete an entry, display all entries, search for a particular entry, save data on the disk, and load data from the disk. How many functions would we need? Let's go take a look. So I'm going to go straight now to code blocks and we start a new file. And we start with hashtag include stdio.h and then hashtag include stdlib.h and hashtag include ctype.h and then hashtag include string.h. Struct address, and this is going to be the same, right? So we can just bring it in from any of these programs that we have here. So this entire structure, just copy it and we'll call this list entry. Just a different name. Okay, and then struct address star start and struct address star last. Okay, and struct address star find entry, or you can just say find name. You're going to pass in character star name. Okay, that's going to be to find a particular name in the list. Now we have another function int menu, which will allow the user to make a choice. Right, so let's just call that select from menu. No arguments there, right? And then void get data. Again, no arguments. Now in this program, what we're going to do is we're going to break up the functions into smaller blocks of code. So essentially we'll have more functions here. So within get data, we will call another function. We're going to call that function input details, which will be called from get data. Okay, and this will take char star prompt. Essentially, the prompt will be enter name, enter street. That will be the prompt. And then char star str1 and int count. Okay. This count will be the number of characters of each structure member. Okay. Then we have void store data. This, of course, will build the linked list. The struct address star ptr and struct address star start and struct address star last. Now for this function, we'll just copy the code because essentially it's going to remain the same. Then we have a function called void search entry, so that the user can search for an entry in the list. No arguments there. We have another one called delete data. And that will be struct address start and struct address star last. Okay, slightly different logic here in terms of deletion. And then void list data, that's taking no arguments, and void display. Okay, that's going to take in struct address and star display ptr. Okay, then we need a function to load the data from the disk. So void load data, no arguments, and we need one to save the data to the disk. So void save data, again no arguments or no parameters. That's all. Now our main function, so int main, and within this function, first of all, start equal to null and last equal to null. Another way of having an infinite loop is to just use a for, just like that, right? No conditions or anything, no initializations as well. And within that, we'll have a switch. Within the switch, we are calling the select from menu function. So select from menu. Here we say case 1, get data, and break. And then case 2, we'll call delete data and send in ampersand start, that is the address of start, and ampersand last. And then break. Case 3, we'll call list data, and there's no arguments there. Break. Case 4, we'll call search entry, right? And search entry again takes no arguments. Break. Case 5, we'll call save data and break. Case 6, we'll call load data and then break. And finally, case 7, we will exit. Right? So that completes our main function. Now let's go and write the code for select from menu. Right? So here we have int select from menu. No parameters there. Within this function, we'll have char choice. Put in 80 bytes there. And integer I. Then printf, enter a name. Second, we should put a 1 here so that the user enters a 1 or 2 or 3, right? Then the second will be 2, delete a name. And printf 3, list the entries. And then 4 is search, so we'll just write search there. Printf 5 will be save the file. Then printf 6 will be load the file. And printf 7 will be quit. Okay. And now we'll have a do while loop. And within this loop, we'll have a printf and then scanf %s comma choice. Right, f flush stdin, and then we'll use I to convert ASCII to integer. So I equal to a to I of choice. Right? And this will be done while I is less than 0 or I is greater than 7. Okay. And then we just return I. So we will return the choice made by the user, and that will be used within the switch, right, to determine which function to call. Okay, that completes select from menu. Now the next function we will write is get data. And within this function, we'll have struct address char input pointer and an infinite loop here again using the for statement. And within this, we say input ptr equal to struct address star, we're using malloc now, malloc size of list entry. Right? Then we check if not input ptr, which means malloc returned a null, then printf out of memory and return, right? Otherwise, we'll call the function input, what do we call it? Details, I think. Input details, that's the function we'll call. And we'll send in enter name, which will be the prompt, right? Comma, input ptr name, which will be str1, the parameter, and the length will be 40, right? Now, after this, we check if not input ptr arrow name of 0, which means the user has not entered anything for name, which in turn means that the user does not want to put in any more information. We break out of this loop, right? Otherwise, we call input details for the rest of the details essentially. So we say here enter street will be the prompt now, and then input ptr arrow operator street, and the count will be 20. Right? And then input details, and now we'll put in city. So prompt will be enter city, comma, input ptr arrow city, and again that's going to be 20 in terms of number of characters, right? And then input details again, and enter state will be the prompt, comma, input ptr arrow state, comma 3, and finally zip. So input details, enter zip will be prompt now, comma, input ptr arrow zip, comma 10, right? And then within this function itself, we'll call store data, passing in input ptr, comma, ampersand start and ampersand last, right? So this completes get data, right? Let's write input details now. So void input details, and that'll be char star prompt, char star str1, and int count, right? And within this function, we'll just have char, let's just call it str2, and let's put in 255 characters there. Do the do while loop printf the prompt, and that's coming in here as a parameter, and then get s str2 2. And then if strlen of str2 is greater than count, right, then we will say too long, right? Or you can say %s too long and put in prompt there. Okay. And let's have a \n as well here. And this will continue while strlen of str2 is greater than count. Right, so the user will have to keep entering until and unless string length of str2 is less than or equal to count. Now once the length is right, then we can call mem cpy and copy to the target, which will be str1. Right, the source will be str2 and the number of characters will be strlen of str2 plus 1. Right? Once that is done, this completes our input details function. Right? Now we write the next function, store data. And that's going to bring in struct address star ptr struct address star start and struct address star last. And within this function, we can just copy the code from store data. So I'm going to go here and just copy the store data function. Right, so this entire code, you can copy it into that function. Okay, once we have that code in, that essentially completes our store data function. Now let's write the code for delete data. So void delete data, and that's bringing in struct address star start and struct address star last. Right? Within this function, we have char name to delete. That's going to be of 80 characters or 80 bytes. Struct address star del ptr, and that's going to be star find name, which is going to be a function. Okay, now we have printf enter name to delete. And then scanf %s comma name to delete. Right? Then we use del ptr to catch the return value of the find function. So find name to delete. Okay. And then if del ptr is not equal to null, then we check if star start is equal to del ptr, which means we are deleting the start element. Okay, so start will now be equal to del ptr next, right? And let me check if start is not, essentially start is not null, then start prior equal to null, right? Because remember, that's the first element, and therefore prior should always be null. Else star last equal to null. Okay. Now else right, so this else, remember this is for this if, or rather the end of this if, so this else is for that one. Then you say here del ptr prior next equal to del ptr next. Then if del ptr not equal to star last, which means it's not the last element, then del ptr next prior equal to del ptr prior. Right, so this is essentially deleting in the middle. Otherwise, star last equal to del ptr prior. Okay. Right. And now we should free this pointer. So we say here free and del ptr. Right, this completes the delete data function. As you saw, the code is slightly changed, but you're welcome to use any logic that works. Right, now we need to write the find name function. So we need to change this to find name, and let's write that function now. So this will be struct address star find name, and it's going to take char star name. Let's just check if the parameter name is correct. Right, so char star name. And within this function, we'll have struct address star find ptr, and you say find ptr equal to start, while find ptr is not equal to null. What we do is we say if not strcmp of name comma find ptr arrow name. So if strcmp returns a 0, right, that's what this means, then we return find ptr, right, because we found a match for the name. Otherwise, find ptr equal to find ptr next, right? And if we do not find the name, then we just return null. No semicolon there, right? That completes the find name function. Now we write the list data function. So list data no parameters there. And within this function, we'll have struct address star list ptr and list ptr equal to start. And then while list ptr is not equal to null, we say display. So we're going to call the display function and we're going to send in list ptr. And then list ptr equal to list ptr next. So you see how we are breaking up the function into smaller and smaller blocks of code, right? Printf \n \n. So after each entry, 2 blank lines. That completes the list data function. Now the display function. So void display, and that's going to take struct address star display ptr. And within this function, we'll have printf name %s \n, comma, display ptr arrow name. Similarly for street, city, state, and zip, right? So, right, that completes the display function. Next function will be search entry. So void search entry and no parameters there. Within this function, you have char name to search. Okay, and struct address star info comma star find, and printf enter name and scanf %s comma name to search. Right, and then info equal to find, or rather find name we should say, and we send in name to search. Right, then if not info, which means we have a null there, and printf %s not found, comma name to search. \n there. Else display, and we can pass in info. Right? So you see how display can be used by more than one function. Right, now we have void save data, no parameters there. Within this function, we have struct address star save ptr. Right, and file star fp. Then fp equal to fopen. Hope you remember this. Name of the file, let's call it details, comma write binary wb. And then if not fp, which means fp is null, then printf and exit 1, right? Otherwise, printf and then save ptr equal to start while save ptr is not equal to null. Within this loop, we just say printf writing to file or writing to disk entry with name %s \n comma save ptr arrow name, right? And then fwrite save ptr comma size of struct address, right, comma 1 comma fp, save ptr equal to save ptr next, right? After that, out of this loop, fclose fp and free the pointer. So free save ptr, right? That completes save data. Now load data. So void load data, no parameters, and here we'll have struct address star load ptr and then file star fp and fp equal to fopen details comma read binary rb, and then if not fp, then printf and exit 1. Otherwise, printf and while start, here we'll say load ptr equal to start next. I'll explain to you what we're doing here, and then free load ptr and start equal to load ptr. So essentially here we are freeing whatever memory was allocated earlier. And here we just say printf. Now this is just for your reference, right? We wouldn't have this in an application. This is just to show you what we've done in this loop. So freed all memory allocated earlier. Right? And now start equal to last equal to null. Okay? And printf, there's no need to put another loading here because we can have it down here. So printf, here we'll say \n loading file. Okay, and then while, remember this, not feof of fp. Now we'll use load ptr equal to struct address star. So we'll allocate memory essentially. Malloc size of struct, we can just say list entry actually, you don't have to say struct address. And then we check if not load ptr, which means load ptr is a null, then here we say printf return, right? Otherwise we check now if fread load ptr is the first argument, then size of struct address, right, comma 1 comma fp, right, is not equal to 1, then break. So we break out of this loop, right? Otherwise printf loading entry with name %s \n comma load ptr arrow operator name. Okay, and then we send that to store data to build the linked list again in memory. So load ptr comma ampersand start and ampersand last, right? And then we close the file. So f close fv. Okay, so that completes the program. Let's run this now and see the results. So there's a semicolon missing somewhere. All right, no bracket here. Right, let's run this now. Enter 1, enter name, enter another name, now if we enter nothing, then we go back to the menu. Let's list the entries. So press 3 and you have all the data that we entered, right? And you can see it's in sorted order. Okay, now let's try searching. So 4 and let's say Helen, and there you have the details printed out, right? What about deletion? So let's say 2 and let's try deleting Joan, and now if we list the entries, we shouldn't see Joan. Yeah, now let's try saving the data. And so we've written these 5 to the disk, and let's try loading the data, and there again we have them brought into memory. 7 will quit the program, right? So I hope that's clear. So this actually ends our session for today. In the next session, we will talk about binary trees. So till then, take care, stay safe. Bye.